Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Howard Steele's eyes narrowed as he scanned the quarterly reports spread across his desk. The numbers were good, better than good. They were exceptional. Quantum Innovations was poised to dominate the tech market for another year. He allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. 20 years of relentless business acumen had built this empire, and he would be damned if anyone tried to take it from him. The insistent buzzing of his phone sliced through his concentration like a bandsaw. Howard glanced down, ready to silence it, until the hospital's number flashed across the screen. A jolt of adrenaline surged through him, primal and electric. "This is Howard Steele," he answered, his voice steady despite the sudden hammering of his heart. The nurse's tone was professional, calm. It did nothing to ease the rising tide of parental dread. "Mr. Steele, your son Simon has been admitted with injuries. He is asking for you." Howard was already moving, his long legs devouring the distance to the elevator. "I'm on my way." The drive to the hospital was a blur of traffic lights and blaring horns. Howard's mind raced through every possibility: car accident, bar fight. Simon was not the reckless type, but at 19, who truly knew what trouble he could have stumbled into? The emergency room assaulted his senses. The sharp tang of disinfectant, the cacophony of machines, the low murmur of hushed conversations. Then he saw him. Simon sat hunched on an exam table, his usual confidence replaced by something small and broken. His left arm was in a cast, and bruises bloomed across his face like dark flowers. "Dad," Simon croaked, his voice raw. Tears welled in his red-rimmed eyes. Howard crossed the room in 3 swift strides, placing a gentle hand on his son's uninjured shoulder. "What happened, son?" Simon swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. I saw Mom. With Steve." He hesitated, as if the words physically hurt. "In your bedroom." The world tilted. Howard's grip on Simon's shoulder tightened, though his expression remained impassive. He had built an empire on his ability to control his emotions, to never show weakness. Now, that very skill was being pushed to its breaking point. "Tell me everything," he said, his voice low and controlled. The story spilled out of Simon in ragged bursts. Walking in on Lana and their neighbor, Steve Shelton, tangled together on the bed Howard had shared with his wife for 20 years. The shock, the confusion, his attempt to call his father. Then Steve, drunk, enraged, grappling with him. The sickening crack of bone as Simon's arm broke against the doorframe. And Lana helping Steve lock her own son in the guest room before fleeing with him like thieves in the night. By the end, a maelstrom of emotions churned beneath Howard's carefully neutral expression: betrayal, white-hot and searing; anger, a slow-burning coal in the pit of his stomach; concern for his son, the only person who truly mattered now. "I'll handle this," Howard said, squeezing Simon's shoulder. His voice was wrapped in velvet. "You are safe now. That is what matters." Simon nodded, some of the tension easing from his frame. He trusted his father implicitly. Howard Steele was a force of nature, a man who made things happen through sheer will. If he said he would take care of it, it would be done. Howard left the hospital with a plan already forming. He had also noticed something else: Simon's injuries, while real, did not seem as serious as described. Perhaps his son had exaggerated. Perhaps he had even lied. But Howard did not dwell on that now. All he could think about was confronting Lana and Steve. He drove home, the once familiar streets now seeming alien and hostile. The house loomed before him, a monument to 2 decades of deception. Inside, the silence was heavy and suffocating. Howard moved through the rooms like a ghost, taking in the signs of Lana's hasty departure: dresser drawers left ajar, hangers scattered across the closet floor. In the master bedroom, the sheets were rumpled, reeking of betrayal and cheap cologne. A quick check of his home office confirmed his fears. The safe was empty, cleared of cash and crucial documents. This was not just infidelity. This was theft. Acting on instincts honed by years of high-stakes business dealings, Howard drove to Steve's house. As he pulled up, he saw them, Lana and Steve, loading suitcases into Steve's flashy sports car. They moved with the easy familiarity of long-term lovers, their betrayal on full display. Cold fury crystallized in Howard's veins. He approached, footsteps measured and deliberate. Going somewhere. His voice cut through the night air like a whip crack. Lana froze, guilt and defiance warring across her face. Steve, never the brightest, tried to puff himself up, to look intimidating. He wilted under Howard's icy glare. "Howard, please," Lana began, her voice tight with panic. "It's not what you think." Howard did not let her finish. His fist connected with Steve's jaw with a satisfying crunch. The younger man stumbled back, blood trickling from his split lip. "You broke my son's arm," Howard said, his voice eerily calm. "Now I am going to break you." What followed was a symphony of unfiltered rage. Howard's fists rained down on Steve, years of pent-up fury finding violent release. He barely registered Lana's screams or her futile attempts to pull him away. When he finally stepped back, Steve was a crumpled heap on the driveway, groaning in pain. Howard turned to Lana. His eyes were cold and hard. "We are done. Do not bother coming back. You made your choice." As he walked away, he caught snippets of their panicked conversation. "Steve, spitting blood, this was not part of the plan. We need those files." Lana, hissing, "Shut up, you fool. He might hear you." Howard's mind raced. Files? Plan? The betrayal ran deeper than he had imagined. This was not just about a failing marriage. This was about his life's work. The next morning, Howard sat across from Frank Harper, Quantum's legal counsel and his oldest friend, in a private conference room. "I am sorry about Lana," Frank began, his voice gruff with emotion. "But something does not add up. Her actions too calculated." Howard nodded, recounting the conversation he had overheard. As they dug into the details of divorce proceedings, Howard's phone buzzed. An unknown number. Then a text appeared. "Back off, or everything you have built will come crashing down." Howard showed the message to Frank, whose expression darkened. "Howard," he said, voice low, "I think we are dealing with something far more dangerous than infidelity." "I agree," Howard replied, his voice grim. He revealed the final piece of the puzzle, the emptied safe, the missing documents. "They were not just after my marriage. They were after Quantum." Frank leaned back, fingers steepled in thought. "We need to tread carefully. If word of this gets out, the shareholders will panic. We could be facing a hostile takeover." Howard's eyes hardened. He had built Quantum from the ground up, transforming a garage startup into a tech empire. He would not let anyone steal it from him. "We fight," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "We find out who is behind this, and we bury them." Frank nodded, a grim smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. This was the Howard he remembered, ruthless, relentless, unstoppable. "Where do we start?" Frank asked, already reaching for his legal pad. Howard's mind was a storm of strategy. "First, we secure the company. Lock down all sensitive projects. Change every access code. Then we follow the money. Lana has been acting strangely for months. There will be a trail." As they strategized, Howard felt a familiar fire reignite within him. This was no longer about his marriage or even his reputation. This was war. And Howard Steele never lost wars. "One more thing," he added, his voice as cold as a Siberian winter. "I want them to suffer. Frank, Lana, Steve, whoever is pulling their strings. I want them to regret the day they crossed me." Frank nodded, no judgment in his eyes. He had known Howard long enough to understand this was not about revenge. This was justice, served the Steele way. As they delved deeper into their strategy, neither man noticed the small device blinking silently beneath the conference table. Someone was listening, and the game was far from over. Howard Steele's office, a fortress of glass and steel, mirrored the man himself, imposing, cold, and unyielding. He sat behind his massive desk, fingers steepled, as he faced Ruby Winters. Her reputation as a private investigator had arrived well before she did, discreet, relentless, and utterly ruthless. Exactly the kind of ally Howard needed in this war. "I need everything on Steve Shelton and my soon-to-be ex-wife, Lana," Howard said, his voice sharp and cold as a scalpel. "Leave no stone unturned." Ruby nodded, eyes gleaming with professional intrigue. "Consider it done, Mr. Steele. Anything specific you want me to focus on?" "Anything that does not add up," Howard replied. "This feels bigger than a simple affair." As Ruby departed to begin her investigation, Howard turned his attention to the financial reports on his desk. The numbers blurred before his eyes as memories flooded in. Simon's injuries, Lana's betrayal, the confrontation. Each moment reignited the cold fire in his chest. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Lawrence Stanley, Howard's business partner and chief executive officer of Quantum Innovations, stepped inside, his expression grave. "Howard, we need to talk," Lawrence said, his usual cheer replaced by deep concern. There are financial discrepancies I cannot explain. Howard's eyes narrowed. Show me. Lauren spread the documents across the desk. As he walked Howard through the irregularities, suspicion turned to certainty. This is not just personal, Howard muttered. It is corporate espionage. A coordinated strike. Lock everything down, he ordered. His voice brooked no argument. Change every access code. Restrict all information flow. I want a list of every person who has accessed our systems in the past 6 months. Lauren nodded, already dialing. What about the board? They will demand answers. They will get them. When I am ready, Howard replied. For now, this stays between us. Moments later, Howard's phone buzzed. A message from Ruby. Found something. Meet me at your house. Come alone. The drive home was a blur of rage and calculations. As he turned into his driveway, he noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the street. Ruby's, no doubt. He found her in his home office, her face grim. You are not going to like this, Mr. Steele. I already hate all of this, Howard replied. What did you find? Ruby held up a tiny device, no larger than a button. It was hidden in your desk lamp. High-end surveillance, live audio feed. I would bet there are more. A chill ran down Howard's spine, followed by a surge of molten fury. They had been listening to him. In his home. There is more, Ruby continued. Steve Shelton has a prior record for fraud and suspected ties to organized crime. As for your wife, she has been withdrawing large sums from your joint accounts for months. We are talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Howard's mind raced, connecting the dots, the missing documents, the financial anomalies at Quantum, the surveillance. This was no reckless affair. It was an orchestrated takedown. And Simon? Howard asked, a rare note of worry creeping into his voice. Ruby's expression softened slightly. Your son appears clean, for now, but he may know more than he realizes. Children often notice things they do not understand. Howard nodded, already planning his next move. Keep digging. I want every secret, every skeleton, and sweep the house for more bugs. As Ruby left, Howard sank into his chair. The leather creaked, a familiar sound in a world that had suddenly turned treacherous. His phone buzzed again. Another message from the anonymous number. Tick-tock, Howard. How much are you willing to lose? His grip tightened, knuckles whitening. They thought he was cornered. They had no idea who they were dealing with. A knock startled him. Simon stood in the doorway, his broken arm in a sling, his face pale with guilt. Dad, he whispered. I think I knew something was wrong with Mom. I should have said something earlier. Howard's expression softened, just slightly. It is all right, son. Tell me everything. Simon spoke in halting bursts, secret phone calls, strange meetings, Lana's sudden interest in his father's work. Howard felt a grim sort of pride. His son was perceptive, a true Steele. You did the right thing by telling me now, Howard said, gently gripping Simon's shoulder. We will handle this, together. Simon nodded, the tension easing from his posture. He believed in his father, believed in his strength, his will. As the boy left, Howard's resolve hardened. Lana and Steve had crossed a line. They had come not only for his business, but for his family. And Howard Steele protected what was his. He picked up the phone and dialed. Lauren, meet me at the office. It is time to go on the offensive. The following days were a whirlwind. Howard and Lauren worked around the clock, setting up digital firewalls, tracking unauthorized access, laying bait for the unseen enemy. Meanwhile, Ruby's investigation peeled back layers of deceit like rotting onion skin. Then, one night, it happened. Howard was driving home, his mind racing through strategies, when he noticed something off. The brakes, sluggish, unresponsive. A sick feeling churned in his gut. He had driven this road countless times, knew every curve, every shadow. He managed to swerve off the road just in time, narrowly avoiding a deadly crash. As he stood on the roadside, his phone buzzed again. Next time, you will not be so lucky. A cold smile spread across Howard's face. They had just made their final mistake. The next morning, Howard stood in his office, facing Lauren and Ruby. The atmosphere was electric with tension. They tried to kill me, Howard said without preamble. Tampered with my brakes. Lauren went pale, but Ruby only nodded, as if it confirmed something she had already suspected. So, Lauren asked, steadying himself, what is our move? Howard's eyes glittered with ruthless intent. We set a trap. Feed them false intel. Something too big to resist. Ruby leaned forward. What kind of intel? A merger, Howard said. One that would triple Quantum's value overnight. The kind of deal that would tempt even the most cautious thief. They will come to steal it, Ruby said, finishing the thought. And we will catch them in the act, Howard replied. As they finalized the plan, Howard felt a surge of adrenaline. The endgame had begun, and he intended to emerge victorious. Lana, Steve, whoever was orchestrating this behind the scenes, they had no idea what they had awakened. Howard Steele was coming for them, and he would show no mercy. That night, Howard's home transformed into a command center. Hidden cameras, microphones, every room covered. Upstairs, Lauren monitored the feeds. Ruby waited in a separate room, ready to spring the trap. Howard paced the living room, every muscle taut. This was no longer just justice. This was retribution. Then, a soft beep in his earpiece. Movement at the back gate, Lawrence said. 2 figures approaching. Howard's lips curled. Right on schedule. He moved into position, concealed in the shadows of his study. Seconds stretched like hours. Then a click. The soft sound of a lock being picked. Howard's fingers closed around the concealed firearm in his jacket. Not from fear, but readiness. The door creaked open. 2 figures stepped inside, Steve and Lana. Moving like seasoned thieves. Steve went to the safe. Lana headed for Howard's computer. Then, looking for something? The lights blazed on. Howard stepped forward, gun raised. The intruders froze. Lana's face drained of color. Howard, please, save it, he said coldly. Howard snarled. I know everything, your plans, the embezzlement, the frame job you orchestrated. Did you really think you could outsmart me, Steve? Steve, his face still swollen and bruised from their last encounter, lunged for something inside his jacket. Howard's finger tightened on the trigger, but before he could fire, another figure burst into the room. Do not move. Simon's voice rang out, strong and commanding. Howard allowed himself a fleeting moment of pride. His son stood tall, calm under pressure, a firearm held steady in his hands. The cast on his arm was gone. It had never been real. Just another part of the elaborate trap. Steve's eyes darted between father and son. Realizing he was outmatched, he slowly raised his hands. Lana, her composure unraveling, turned towards Simon. Maybe, please, you do not understand. I understand perfectly, Simon cut her off, his voice like ice. I understood when I caught you with Steve. I understood when you helped him lock me in that room. And I understand now, watching you try to rob us blind. The betrayal on Lana's face would have been comical if it were not so pitiful. She had never suspected that her son, the one she believed she had manipulated, had been playing her all along. Howard stepped forward, his gun unwavering. It is over. The police are on their way. But before they get here, I want answers. Who are you working for? Steve's lip curled into a sneer. You think this ends with us? We are just the tip of the iceberg. There are people out there who want to see you burn. And they will not stop. His sentence ended in a gasp as Simon, moving with explosive speed, slammed his fist into Steve's gut. Answer the question, Simon growled. But before Steve could respond, Lana made her move. With a desperate cry, she lunged for Howard's gun. Time slowed. Howard saw the wild desperation in her eyes, saw her fingers reach for the weapon, and in that split second, he made his choice. The shot rang out like a thunderclap. Lana stumbled backward. Dad. Simon's voice was sharp with shock. Howard's face remained a mask of cold fury. She made her choice. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Steve, realizing time was slipping away, made a last-ditch grab for Lana's purse. Simon tackled him before he could escape, pinning him to the ground just as the police burst through the front door. The chaos that followed was a blur: paramedics tending to Lana, officers securing Steve in handcuffs, detectives collecting statements. Through it all, Howard stood unmoving, eyes fixed on the 2 people who had tried to destroy everything he held dear. As things settled, Simon approached him. It is really over, he said quietly. Howard nodded, allowing himself the first breath of peace he had taken in weeks. It is over. You did well, son. Simon offered a small smile, though sadness lingered in his eyes. I wish it had not come to this. Howard placed a firm hand on his son's shoulder, steady and reassuring. They made their choices. Now they faced the consequences. As dawn broke over the city, Howard stood in his study, surveying the aftermath. Lawrence and Ruby joined him, their expressions a mix of relief and grim satisfaction. The board is going to want answers, Lawrence said. They will get them, Howard replied. Every dirty detail. It is time to clean house and root out any other traitors hiding in the shadows. Ruby handed over a thick file. This will help. Everything I uncovered about their operation, contacts, transactions, and a few names you might want to look into. Howard took the file, his mind already crafting the next steps. This was no longer about salvaging a company. This was about sending a message. No one crossed Howard Steele and walked away unscathed. Months passed. The trial became a media firestorm. Every sordid detail splashed across headlines. When Howard took the stand, his testimony was a masterclass in controlled rage. He laid bare every part of Lana and Steve's betrayal, supported by undeniable evidence. The verdict was swift, guilty on all counts. Howard felt no joy, no satisfaction, only a cold sense of justice finally delivered. In the aftermath, quantum innovations emerged stronger than ever. The board, impressed by Howard's leadership during the crisis, granted him even more control. New protocols were put in place. The company became a digital fortress. Simon, having proven his courage and insight, took on a greater role within the company. Father and son worked side by side, rebuilding what had been threatened and creating something even stronger. One evening, as they stood in Howard's office overlooking the city, Simon turned to his father. "Do you ever regret how things ended with Mom?" Howard's gaze remained on the skyline, his expression unreadable. "Regret is a luxury we cannot afford, Simon. She made her choices. We made ours. All that matters now is moving forward." Simon nodded, understanding the weight of his father's words. They had weathered betrayal and corporate warfare and emerged not just victorious, but unbreakable. The Steele legacy would endure, forged in fire, tempered by adversity. As night fell over the city, Howard Steele allowed himself a small, measured smile. He had faced down his enemies, protected what mattered, and prevailed. And if anyone else dared to challenge him, they would learn the hard way that crossing Howard Steele was a mistake they would regret for the rest of their lives.